Maybe you clicked here just out of curiosity, or maybe, without realizing it, you were looking for a quiet space. A place where words arrive slowly and silence is part of the story. I wrote this piece with care, stitching together memories, hurts, and small discoveries, hoping that, at some point, you might recognize a piece of yourself. If that happens, even for a moment, stay. Listen as far as you can. And if you'd like, leave a small sign behind. Sometimes it's just a word or a short, "I'm here," in the comments. Sometimes it's sharing the story with someone who might need it. And sometimes it's simply pressing that little button to let me know you'd like to hear more. Whatever you choose, it matters. And I'm grateful you're here. When I was 6, my bed didn't have legs. It was a sunken, second-hand couch in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled like laundry soap and coffee grounds. I never thought of it as less than a bed. It was mine. Every morning before the sky woke up, Mom would lean over, kiss my forehead, and whisper, "I'll bring donuts after my shift, buddy." Then the front door would click behind her, soft enough not to wake the neighbors. I know now it was 6:12 a.m. because the microwave clock glowed that exact number in the dark kitchen. Back then, it just felt like too early. The kind of early where the hallway heater rattled and the street outside was all delivery trucks and tired headlights. I'd pull the fleece throw up to my chin and listen to the apartment settle. Our place was small, but small has a way of feeling safe when you can see every corner from where you sleep. Mom's name is Leah. If you asked anyone who actually knew her, they'd say she's the kind of person who remembers your coffee order after meeting you once. If you asked her parents, my grandparents, they'd tell you she made her bed and now had to lie in it. Their favorite daughter, my Aunt Jasmine, never made beds. She posed in them, in hotels with white sheets and city views. On Instagram, she looked like a sparkler. Beach hair, champagne glasses, captions with airplane emojis. In our family group chat, Grandma would drop hard-eye reactions like confetti. "Our Jasmine is going places," she'd comment. She meant literal places. No one asked where Mom was going at 6:12 a.m. They didn't see her tuck her sneakers under the doormat because our shoe rack broke and we hadn't replaced it yet. They didn't see the little spiral notebook on the counter. "Someday," written on the cover in her careful, hopeful handwriting. I saw it because the couch was 3 steps from everything. Mom worked at a diner off the highway, the kind with a pie carousel that never seemed to spin and a neon sign that buzzed in the rain. On weekends, she picked up hours at a gas station across town. When you're 6, you don't understand double shift. You just know the room is brighter when she's there and duller when she isn't. She came home with stories about truckers who tipped in quarters and teachers who graded papers between pancakes. Sometimes she'd laugh at something small, the way a regular called hash browns breakfast fries. And it would fill the apartment for a minute, like somebody had opened a window to spring. The first time I noticed the difference between how my mom loved and how her parents judged, it wasn't during a fight. There weren't slammed doors or speeches. It was a Sunday afternoon call. Grandma asked, again, if we wanted to come home for a while. Home, being their split-level house with a finished basement. Mom said thanks, but no thanks, voice steady. After, she turned the ringer off and stared at the blank TV screen for a moment, like it might tell her what to do next. I wasn't supposed to be listening, but our place didn't have many places to not listen. Later that night, a photo popped up in the family chat. Jasmine at a rooftop pool, sunglasses, blue water, something about recharging. Grandpa commented, "You deserve the world, kiddo." Mom typed, "Cute," and put her phone face down. Then she asked me about my spelling test and whether I still wanted the donut with sprinkles or the powdered kind that dusted your lips like winter. None of this was dramatic. That's the thing I want to be clear about. If you're expecting big scenes, we didn't have them. We had a budget whiteboard with dry erase smudges. We had a jar that swallowed tips and spit out rent. We had rules like lights out by 9 and no leaving Lego on the floor because Mom's feet already hurt. The worst part wasn't shouting. It was silence. The kind where you learn to fill it with cartoons and cereal and the sound of Mom humming to herself while she ironed her uniform. There were small kindnesses that taught me what mattered. Once, on a Wednesday that had stranded itself in the middle of winter, our neighbor Mrs. Carter from 2B knocked to say her heater died. Mom grabbed her tool bag, the one with the duct tape handle, and went to look. I followed in socks because kids are boundaryless by nature. Mom didn't fix it that night. She called the building office and then found Mrs. Carter an extra blanket from our closet. Later, she told me, "Grown-ups take care of neighbors. It's free to be decent." She didn't say it like a lesson. She said it like a fact, the way you'd say, water boils at 212. On payday Fridays, we had rituals. She'd let me stay up until she came home from the diner. The hallway smelled like fryer oil and coffee when the elevator doors opened. She'd set down a paper bag, kiss my hair, and pull out 2 donuts, one chocolate frosted, one powdered. We'd eat them at the tiny table by the window that looked out at a parking lot and a sliver of sky. "Tell me the best thing that happened today," she'd say. I'd tell her something small, won at kickball, got a smiley face sticker. She'd tell me something even smaller. Someone said, "Please." Someone said, "Thanks." We'd both pretend we were full after half a donut so there'd be breakfast. If I sound like I'm defending her, maybe I am. Kids are biased toward the person who shows up. And Mom showed up in the ways that actually matter here. She didn't have a brand. She had a schedule and a backbone. She didn't post motivational quotes. She wrote grocery lists that avoided the expensive cereal I liked unless it was on sale. She could make a $10 bill do 5 different jobs, and no one on the internet applauded. When my grandparents did call, it was usually practical. "Have you thought about moving back? The basement's open." Mom would say there was mold and no privacy. "You're being dramatic," Grandma would respond, the words stretched out like gum. Then a beat later, "Jasmine just landed in Miami for a brand thing. Isn't that exciting?" Mom would say, "Sounds nice," like a person looking at someone else's vacation through a storefront window. At 6, I didn't understand resentment. I understood routines. The way Mom tucked my blanket under my feet. The way she held the front door while I carried the recycling, because even helpers need help. The way she kept the promise, even when the promise was small enough to fit in a paper bag with a grease stain at the bottom. That first chapter of our life didn't have villains in capes. It had people who mistook convenience for virtue and attention for love. It had a kid who thought safety was measured in inches, the distance between a couch and a mom's hand when she reaches to smooth your hair. If there was a hook to our story, it wasn't a twist. It was a question I didn't know I was asking yet. How far can kindness stretch before someone confuses it for weakness? I didn't know the answer then. I just knew the couch was warm, and the clock would read 6:12 again tomorrow, and Mom would kiss my forehead and promise donuts. And I believed her, because she kept the promises she could afford. When I was 6, my bed didn't have legs. It was a sunken, second-hand couch in a 1-bedroom apartment that smelled like laundry soap and coffee grounds. I never thought of it as less than a bed. It was mine. Every morning before the sky woke up, Mom would lean over, kiss my forehead, and whisper, "I'll bring donuts after my shift, buddy." Then the front door would click behind her, soft enough not to wake the neighbors. I know now it was 6:12 a.m. because the microwave clock glowed that exact number in the dark kitchen. Back then, it just felt like too early, the kind of early where the hallway heater rattled and the street outside was all delivery trucks and tired headlights. I'd pull the fleece throw up to my chin and listen to the apartment settle. Our place was small, but small has a way of feeling safe when you can see every corner from where you sleep. Mom's name is Leah. If you asked anyone who actually knew her, they'd say she's the kind of person who remembers your coffee order after meeting you once. If you asked her parents, my grandparents, they'd tell you she made her bed and now had to lie in it. Their favorite daughter, my Aunt Jasmine, never made beds. She posed in them, in hotels with white sheets and city views. On Instagram, she looked like a sparkler. Beach hair, champagne glasses, captions with airplane emojis. In our family group chat, Grandma would drop hard-eye reactions like confetti. "Our Jasmine is going places," she'd comment. She meant literal places. No one asked where Mom was going at 6:12 a.m. They didn't see her tuck her sneakers under the doormat because our shoe rack broke and we hadn't replaced it yet. They didn't see the little spiral notebook on the counter. "Someday," written on the cover in her careful, hopeful handwriting. I saw it because the couch was 3 steps from everything. Mom worked at a diner off the highway, the kind with a pie carousel that never seemed to spin and a neon sign that buzzed in the rain. On weekends, she picked up hours at a gas station across town. "When you're 6, you don't understand double shift. You're being dramatic," Grandma would respond, the words stretched out like gum. Then a beat later. "Jasmine just landed in Miami for a brand thing. Isn't that exciting?" Mom would say, "Sounds nice," like a person looking at someone else's vacation through a storefront window. At 6, I didn't understand resentment. I understood routines. The way Mom tucked my blanket under my feet. The way she held the front door while I carried the recycling, because even helpers need help. The way she kept the promise, even when the promise was small enough to fit in a paper bag with a grease stain at the bottom. That first chapter of our life didn't have villains in capes. It had people who mistook convenience for virtue and attention for love. It had a kid who thought safety was measured in inches, the distance between a couch and a mom's hand when she reaches to smooth your hair. If there was a hook to our story, it wasn't a twist. It was a question I didn't know I was asking yet. How far can kindness stretch before someone confuses it for weakness? I didn't know the answer then. I just knew the couch was warm, and the clock would read 6:12 again tomorrow, and Mom would kiss my forehead and promise donuts. And I believed her because she kept the promises she could afford. After the car disappeared and the rain finally let up, our apartment felt heavier. Mom moved quieter than usual, like the floorboards might give out under her. For a few nights, I thought she might just stay in that silence forever. The kind that had swallowed her whole after the text from Grandma. But then one morning, while I was drawing superheroes on the back of a grocery receipt, I saw her open the drawer by the fridge and pull out a battered spiral notebook. On the cover, written in faded black marker, was a single word: someday. To me, at 6 years old, it looked like a treasure map. Pages full of numbers, arrows, lists, words I couldn't sound out yet. I thought maybe she was keeping secrets about buried gold, or maybe the directions to someplace better than our couch bed. She sat at the table with a cup of gas station coffee and traced the pages with her finger. There were whole lines underlined in red, phone numbers scribbled in the margins, and words like scholarship and childcare alternatives. To me, it was all code. To her, I think it was the only thing keeping her from sinking. I remember asking, "What's that?" She looked up, tired but steady. "It's my way out, buddy. A map. Someday, this will take us somewhere." I didn't understand the details, but I believed her, because she said it like she believed it herself. That week, instead of just going from one job to the next, She started making calls during her breaks. She pinned the phone between her shoulder and ear while flipping through the notebook. I'd hear pieces of conversation. Weekend program, certification, 3 months, flexible hours. One night, she came home later than usual, hair damp from the drizzle, eyes wide awake in a way I hadn't seen since before the car was gone. She leaned down, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "I got in." "In where?" I asked. "School," she said, smiling. "A trade program, appliance repair. People always need their heat, their AC, their fridge working. It's good work, honest work. We're gonna be okay." I didn't know what a certification was, but I knew what okay felt like, and it had been missing from our place for too long. From then on, she carried the notebook everywhere. She added notes about classes, circled dates, drew stars next to deadlines. I watched her study at the counter with her diner uniform still on, grease stains on her sleeves and a pen in her hand. She'd quiz herself out loud while I ate cereal for dinner. At 6, I thought determination looked like superheroes with capes. Later, I realized it looked like a woman in a faded apron, reading about wiring and voltage at midnight with her kid asleep 2 feet away. The couch was still my bed. The car was still gone. The grandparents were still cold. But the notebook meant something had shifted. She wasn't waiting for a rescue anymore. She was digging, slow, stubborn, like a miner who knew there was light on the other side if she just kept swinging. That's what someday meant to me. Not a wish, not a fairy tale. It was a tunnel. And Mom had decided we were going to dig our way out, even if it meant her hands would bleed before we saw daylight. It was a Tuesday night when the envelope came. Mom had just kicked off her shoes, her hair tied back with the same pencil she used to scribble notes in the someday book. She looked so tired I didn't even ask about donuts. The knock on the door startled both of us. It was Mr. Alvarez, our landlord, holding a folded receipt in one hand and his umbrella dripping on the hallway carpet. "Leah," he said, his voice softer than usual, "your rent's covered." 3 months ahead. I remember the way she blinked, like he'd spoken a foreign language. "That's not possible. I didn't," but there it was in his hand. A stamped receipt, paid in full. At the bottom was a name written in clean block letters. Cole Henderson. At 6 years old, names didn't mean much to me. Henderson could have been a superhero or the mailman for all I knew. But when Mom read it, her hand shook just enough that the paper rattled. She closed the door and sat at the table without even taking off her coat. She stared at the name like it was a ghost. Then finally, she dug out her old flip phone from the drawer. There was a number scrawled in her notebook under "Someday," and she dialed it with a kind of hesitation I'd never seen in her before. I sat on the couch bed, hugging my knees, watching her listen. On the third ring, a man's voice answered. "Leah?" Her hand went still. "Cole?" The silence stretched so long I thought maybe the line had gone dead. Then the man exhaled, heavy and cracked. "I didn't know," he said. "About Noah, about any of it." I froze. He knew my name. Mom covered her eyes with her palm. Why now?" He told her he'd seen a post online. Her mother bragging about Jasmine's trip to Spain, slipping in a comment about Leah being a leech. He got curious. He asked around, and when he found out what had been done with the car, with the years, with her name, he couldn't stay quiet anymore. Then he dropped the part that made her grip the phone like it was burning. "Leah, your parents used your name to borrow money from me. Years ago. They said you signed off on it. I believed them. When you stopped talking to me, I thought you didn't care. But it wasn't you. It was them." She didn't answer right away. I saw her lips move, but no sound came. For a kid, silence is scarier than yelling. And in that moment, the quiet in our kitchen was louder than any storm. Finally, Mom whispered, "They forged it, didn't they?" "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't want to believe it back then. But now, I know better. Let me help. For him. For Noah." I didn't understand the details, contracts, signatures, debt. But I understood this. Someone from her past knew the truth. Someone had seen through the lies. Mom hung up eventually, but her hands stayed pressed together, trembling against her forehead. She didn't look broken, like the night the car vanished. She looked stunned, like a door she thought was locked forever had just swung open. To me, Cole Henderson was just a stranger on a piece of paper. But to Mom, he was something else entirely. Proof that her parents' cruelty wasn't just unkind. It was criminal. And for the first time, I saw a spark in her eyes that wasn't exhaustion or hurt. It was possibility. I wasn't supposed to hear the second call. Mom had shut her bedroom door, the one that always stuck near the hinge. But when you're 6, curiosity makes you bold. I pressed my ear to the wood and caught fragments of words that didn't belong in my world yet. Loan agreement, signature, forged. Cole's voice carried through in pieces, low and careful. "Leah, it wasn't just the car. Do you remember when you were pregnant with Noah? When you stopped returning my calls? I thought you wanted nothing to do with me. But your parents came to me first. They said you'd signed off on a loan so Jasmine could study abroad. Said you were too embarrassed to tell me yourself." There was a long pause, and then Mom's voice, strained, breaking but steadying itself mid-sentence. "I never signed anything. I was barely hanging on. I was working doubles, saving diapers by cutting coupons, and they—" She stopped, and the silence was worse than shouting. Cole continued, his words harder now. "They used your name, Leah. Your credit. Your reputation. When the payments didn't show, I assumed you'd walked away. That you'd chosen Jasmine's dreams over us. And when I pressed them for answers, they shrugged and told me you were irresponsible, a liar. I believed them." My chest tightened, even though I didn't understand half of it. All I could make sense of was this. My grandparents had done something awful to my mom long before the car, long before the text that told her to be grateful for walking. This wasn't new. It was a pattern. From behind the door, I heard her whisper, "They buried me, and I let them." "No," Cole said firmly. "You survived them. There's a difference." I backed away then, not because I didn't want to hear more, but because the weight of it pressed on me like the rain outside. I crawled onto the couch bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to put the pieces together. In my 6-year-old mind, it was simple math. They had hurt her before, and they had done it again. They had taken things that weren't theirs, her car, her name, her chance to breathe, and told the world it was her fault. That night, when Mom finally came out of the bedroom, her eyes were red but clear. She didn't explain the details to me, but she didn't have to. I already understood enough. The grandparents I had drawn birthday cards for, the ones who sent Jasmine gift bags but mailed me socks, they hadn't just been mean. They'd been cruel, calculated, and they'd gotten away with it for years. For the first time, I felt something I hadn't before. Not just confusion, not just sadness, anger. Anger that boiled up even in a 6-year-old's chest. Because if they could do that to her, if they could bury her under their lies and still sleep easy at night, then maybe it was time someone started digging the truth back up. And I knew, watching her pull out that someday notebook again with steadier hands, that someone was going to be Mom. By then, life settled into a rhythm that didn't look like much from the outside. but felt like survival to me. Mom worked her shifts at the diner, still poured coffee for strangers who barely said thank you, and on weekends she went to the trade school. HVAC repair. That's what she called it. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning. A mouthful of words that, to me, just meant machines bigger than our apartment that Mom was learning to fix. She didn't quit her jobs, she just added more hours on top. If exhaustion was a currency, she spent it freely. When she came home, I noticed her hands first. They used to be soft, the kind that smoothed my blanket and braided my hair into messy spikes when I asked. But after a few weeks, her palms grew rough. The knuckles cracked from the cold, nails chipped from metal and wiring. She'd rub lotion in at night, but it never really healed. I remember one evening in particular. She dropped her bag by the door, and when she reached down to ruffle my hair, I saw the skin split near her thumb, a thin line of red against all the dryness. I winced, but she didn't. "Doesn't hurt," she said, smiling. "Just means I'm working." To me, it looked like she was breaking apart piece by piece. But somehow, the more her hands frayed, the stronger she seemed to get. She studied at the kitchen table, manuals spread out like puzzle pieces, muttering about thermostats and compressors, while I colored next to her. She'd quiz herself, then glance at my drawing, pretending to take it just as seriously. "That's a good dragon," she'd say, highlighting another line of text. When I fell asleep on the couch bed, sometimes I woke in the middle of the night to the sound of her whispering definitions under her breath, her hands tracing the air like she was rewiring something only she could see. From a kid's view, it felt unfair. Why did she have to work harder than everyone else? Why did her parents cheer for Jasmine's vacation selfies while Mom was bleeding through her cuticles just to pay for heat? But when I looked at her, really looked, I saw something I didn't have a word for yet. Resolve. She carried her hands like proof. Proof that she wasn't waiting for rescue. Proof that the someday notebook was no longer someday. It was happening now. Every night, no matter how raw her skin looked, she still cupped my cheek or smoothed my hair, careful and gentle, as if her touch hadn't changed. That's how I knew. Whatever the world took from her, she wouldn't let it change what she gave to me. And maybe that's where hope really lives. Not in perfect plans or easy victories, but in hands that crack and bleed and still reach for you anyway. For the first time since the car disappeared, I believed Mom when she said, "We're going to be okay." The jumpsuit came from a thrift store. Faded navy blue, sleeves a little too long, zipper that stuck halfway. To me, it was just a costume, something fun to wear while Mom practiced tightening bolts on an old unit she dragged home from class. She laughed when I waddled around the apartment, holding her wrench like it was Excalibur. "Careful, buddy," she said. "That's heavier than it looks." I didn't mind. I felt like a hero in that jumpsuit, like I was helping Mom fix the world one screw at a time. One Saturday morning, she asked if I could stand still by the new used car she'd managed to buy. Our second chance sedan, she called it. I posed, grinning, wrench in hand, the sleeves rolled up twice so I didn't trip. She snapped the photo, and I thought that was it. That night, I watched her attach the picture to a message. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long time before typing a single line. "He doesn't need first class. He's building his own runway." Then she hit send, to Grandma and Grandpa. At 6, I thought she was just proud of me. I imagined them smiling at the picture, maybe even printing it out like they did Jasmine's vacation shots. I didn't know it was a strike back, quiet but sharp, aimed at the same people who told her to be grateful we let you walk. She didn't explain. She just tucked the phone face down on the table and went back to reviewing her notes. But I noticed something different in her posture. Like for once, she wasn't shrinking under their words, but standing taller because of her own. The reply came fast. I didn't see the texts, but I heard the vibration on the table, one after another. Mom didn't pick it up. She just poured herself a cup of tap water, drank it slowly, and smiled at me. Later, when I crawled onto the couch bed, I asked, "Why'd you send them my picture?" She kissed my forehead and said, "Because sometimes the best answer isn't yelling, it's showing." I didn't get it then. I thought it was just about the jumpsuit, about her wanting to prove I looked cute holding a wrench. But years later, when I remembered her exact words, "He's building his own runway," I realized she hadn't been talking about me alone. She was talking about both of us, about the road we were paving, inch by inch, with nothing more than cracked hands, a thrift store jumpsuit, and a refusal to stay silent. And for the first time, even as a kid, I felt it. Pride. Pride in her, pride in us. Pride that maybe we were already on that runway, getting ready to take off, without them. The phone started buzzing that same night after Mom sent the picture. At first, it was just one call, then another, each one rolling into the next until the sound felt like it was rattling our walls. She didn't answer. She never does when her parents are worked up. Instead, she set the phone on the counter, screen down, and filled the sink with warm water. She began scrubbing at the same dishes she'd already washed earlier, like if she kept her hands moving, the noise couldn't touch her. I sat on the couch bed, hugging my knees, listening. When the buzzing stopped, the voicemail icon blinked red. She pressed play, not to hear it, but, I think, because she wanted to know what she was up against. Grandma's voice cracked through first, sharp as glass. "You think you're clever? Posting your little costume stunt?" "No one's impressed, Leah. You're still nothing without us. You'll always be nothing." The beep cut her off, but then came Grandpa, slower, meaner. "You should thank us for not throwing you and that brat out years ago. Ungrateful kids don't go far. Remember that." I didn't understand every word, but I knew what brat meant, and I knew it was about me. My throat went tight, but Mom kept scrubbing, her face calm, her eyes locked on the silverware as if it were the only thing that mattered. Then the last one played. Jasmine's voice, slurred, laughing background noise of music and clinking glasses. "Aw, did you buy him a costume? What's next, Leah? He builds a jet engine? Supermom, right? Call me when he graduates from cosplay to real life." Her laugh lingered even after the message cut out. I looked at Mom then. I expected her to slam the phone down, or shout, or cry. She did none of that. She just rinsed the plate in her hands, set it on the rack, and reached for another. The kitchen was quiet except for the drip of water, the soft clink of dishes, and the hum of the fridge. Her silence pressed heavier than any of their words. As a kid, I thought silence meant defeat. But that night, watching her wipe the counter with steady strokes, I realized silence could be sharper than shouting. It could be the sound of someone who'd already decided not to play the same game. The voicemails were ugly. They were meant to bruise. Instead, they bounced off something stronger. I crawled under my blanket and closed my eyes, the voices still echoing in my head. But over it all, louder than anything they'd said, was the sound of Mom's quiet, unyielding, unshaken. And I understood, even at 6, their cruelty wasn't the loudest thing in the room anymore. Her silence was. By spring, Mom had moved past her training program and into real work. She was picking up jobs all over town, fixing dryers, unclogging heaters, rewiring units that hadn't been touched in years. I thought of her as a superhero, with a tool bag instead of a cape. One Saturday, she let me tag along. We walked into a brick apartment building not far from ours. The hall smelled like dust and paint thinner, and the walls echoed with the hum of old pipes. She carried her clipboard in one hand, toolbox in the other. When the elevator door slid open, my stomach dropped. I knew this place. I'd been here before, holding Grandma's hand as she bragged about Jasmine's latest trip. This was their building. Mom didn't flinch. She just set down the toolbox and started working. I followed her from unit to unit, watching her take photos of leaks, scribble notes about mold, measure voltage with a little meter that beeped. She spoke less than usual, her face calm, professional. To me, it looked like she was just fixing things. But every time her camera flashed, every time her pen scratched across the page, I felt like something bigger was happening. Later, I peeked at her clipboard